Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and we are back with another start and sit video for you guys for the week 1 of the NFL. Again, we are talking week 1 of the NFL, full PPR or even half PPR. If it is a standard league, hit me up in the comments down below. I'd love to help answer any questions you guys have, of course, for your lineups. Now, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday, those are the games. Those are the days where there are going to be games. So make sure you guys are paying attention. Do not put your flex players in Thursday and Friday, and let's start talking wide receivers. This is the wide receiver start and sit video to help you guys out with your week 1. Wide receiver position is such a deep position, but it's such a tough and challenging position to put the right player, because most of you probably have 5 or 6 or even more wide receivers on your roster, and you don't want to make a mistake of putting a guy in a flex play or maybe your wide receiver 1 or 2, and then they end up having a bomb game. So hopefully this helps you guys out. Of course, if you guys have questions, hit me up in the comments down below. I'd love to, again, answer any of those questions. I know, again, wide receiver is probably the toughest one when it comes to who you want to put in your lineup. So these are the obvious starts at the wide receiver position. I don't have a huge list, but it's still a decently sized list here. These are guys, whether it be matchup or, again, just pure targets their way, they're going to have a good game and should be in your lineup without question. Now, the first wide receiver I want to mention as a good start is going to be Malik Nabers versus the Vikings. Yes, the rookie Nabers. He comes into a great matchup for week 1 and could easily help his rookie season develop into a really strong one. Nabers should be force-fed plenty of targets against the Vikings, who will force the Giants to pass quite a bit. Even though it's Sam Darnold, not Kirk Cousins, I do believe the Vikings will be throwing the ball plenty, which means the Giants will have to as well. Plus, the Vikings last year gave up the 4th most points to wide receivers combined, which was 38.9 points combined. They also allowed the 2nd most receptions to wide receivers as well. So that's a really challenging aspect for the defense. Now, I do think the Vikings defense, again, brand new year. We'll see how things play out. But this is a really good matchup for Malik Nabers to really go into this. And he was probably a steal, I think a steal for most people in drafts, because he probably fell in the 3rd, 4th, maybe in 5th round. And I think Malik Nabers is going to see plenty of options his way, even though it is Daniel Jones at the quarterback position. Now, another receiver I want to mention as a good start this week is going to be Devonte Adams versus the Chargers. Minshew Mania is here. I'm actually excited the fact that Minshew is the starting quarterback, and I do believe he is an upgrade over AOC. Even though Devonte Adams wanted AOC to be his quarterback, I think having Minshew a quarterback, I believe, is going to give Devonte Adams the best chance to perform in the regular season as far as on the field and, of course, in fantasy. Chargers also allowed 172 yards combined to wide receivers last year per game, and Adams himself averaged 19 points per game against the Chargers last season. So this is a matchup he does a really good job, even though it's a new quarterback, obviously new team, everything's new, and I get it. Jim Harbaugh's that, yeah, I get it. But I think the Chargers still have some struggles on the defensive side, and I think Adams just knows that team really well, and I think he's going to perform. Getting to that 18, 19 point range would not be a shocker. Another wide receiver I like this week is going to be Terry McLaurin versus the Bucs. McLaurin has a great matchup this week against an average pass defense in the Buccaneers. Losing Jahan Dotson this offseason, I think actually benefits McLaurin, because I think it's going to force Jaden Daniels to feed McLaurin plenty of targets. And McLaurin's already a great wide receiver. He's definitely a high-end wide receiver too. Sometimes he has games of being a wide receiver 1. This gives him the edge this week based off of target share alone. The Bucs struggled against the pass last season, which they did allow the 4th most wide yards to wide receivers. So again, really good matchup for Terry McLaurin. He should be in your lineup without a doubt. The last receiver I want to mention as a good start is Christian Kirk versus the Dolphins. This matchup for Kirk is a great one. Normally, the Dolphins have a great cornerback on the outside in Jalen Ramsey, but Kirk plays the slot. And because he plays the slot, Jalen Ramsey won't be on him often, even though typically tries to cover the best receiver. That really allows him to now force covering Gabe Davis or Brian Thomas Jr. because Kirk will be all over the field being moved around. So this is a really good option for him. I think he's going to get plenty of targets. This is, again, him rekindling that, connection between him and Trevor Lawrence. He is absolutely Trevor Lawrence's favorite weapon. And the Dolphins also allowed an average of a touchdown per game to the wide receiver. So this is a really good week for Christian Kirk for your lineup. I'm not expecting him to be your wide receiver 1. I think he's definitely going to be your wide receiver 2 or flex play, but I do like Christian Kirk a lot this week. Now, the first wide receiver I'm going to sit, it's going to be a big one, Brandon Aiyuk. Look, he's going against the Jets this week, and look, here's the deal. Aiyuk is the best receiver on the 49ers. Deebo Samuel is a very talented receiver, but Aiyuk as a pure wide receiver is the best receiver. But not being part of the offseason, not really being part of the training camp, being part of the preseason, and now matching up against a Jets defense who has Sauce Gardner, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, that's going to be a tough one for him. The Jets were the toughest against wide receivers last year, only allowing 8 receptions combined per game to receivers and only 21 points combined as well. So this matchup's really tough. I do think there's going to be a slow start to this game for Brandon Aiyuk and Purdy to be kind of connected. I think Deebo Samuel has a little bit better game. So I think between those two, I would put Deebo in if you have to put one of them. But again, I'm not in favor of putting Brandon Aiyuk in the starting lineup if I have other options. And I'm sure you do have other depth pieces because, again, Aiyuk has got a really tough matchup. Another receiver I'm going to sit this week is going to be Chris Olave versus the Panthers. Look, this will shock some people, but the Panthers are actually the second best defense against wide receivers in fantasy last season. They only allowed an average of 27 points combined and just over 126 yards in the air. Plus, having J.C. Horn covering Olave this season, again, like last season, is going to be tough for him. Olave only averaged 12 points a game against J.C. Horn and realistically against the Panthers last season, and that's only going to really kind of go into this season. The tough part is we're not sure how Derek Carr is going to play. He's had some inconsistency. Realistically, the only weapon they really have is Chris Olave. You've got obviously Alvin Kamara, who I think is going to be force-fed. Kamara should obviously be in your lineup. But this week, I'm going to put Chris Olave on the bench if I can. Another receiver I'm going to put on my bench is going to be Drake London if I have other options. Drake London is going against the Steelers. I don't love London this week. Last year, Drake London was wide receiver 44 in average points per game. Yet he was drafted in the second round this season. Like, he's been hyped up like crazy. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that he obviously has Kirk Cousins. And I get it. There's a lot of high hope. But he's playing against a tough Joey Porter Jr. on the outside. And he's done a really good job for the Steelers. Doesn't really bode well for Drake London. And typically between a new offense, new quarterback, things like that, it takes some time. It takes a couple games for Kirk Cousins and Drake London to really, I think, gel. Now, would it be shocking if Drake London also has 100 yards, touchdown? Not necessarily, but I think looking at rosters, and this is where you guys have to ask questions, I think I would rather have someone else than Drake London on my roster this week just because I think this is a really tough matchup. Now, keeping in that same game, I have George Pickens as a sit this week as well. The O-line, new quarterback, tough Falcons defense combines a really bad matchup for Pickens. Falcons only allowed 127 yards combined to wide receivers last season, which wasn't a lot. They were actually pretty good against, the pass. On top of that, Pickens, as explosive he is, and I think he can have a strong season. My worry this year so far is going to be obviously the connection between him and Russell Wilson. I do really worry about that offensive line. I know it was preseason, but that offensive line did not look good. They didn't give Russell Wilson or Justin Fields time. I do think there might be, again, some plays are going to put Fields in. That might mix some stuff. So that worries me a little bit as well. But this is a really tough matchup for Pickens. AJ Terrell is a really good cornerback, like one of the best in the league. He's going to be obviously trying to cover him. I just don't like it this week. So I'm going to put him on my bench if I possibly can. Now, my sleepers for this week, I have Jaden Reed versus the Eagles, Chris Godwin versus the Commanders, and then Curtis Samuel versus the Cardinals. Cardinals, sorry. Got blank right there. So really tough matchup for some of these guys. But I also really love their matchup. Like Chris Godwin in the slot, I think is going to be really good this year, even though I still recommend Mike Evans. I think Jaden Reed, obviously that the only reason why it's kind of tough to maybe for some people is the fact that you don't know what wide receiver is going to be the wide receiver 1 for Jordan Love. But I think this is a really good matchup against the Eagles. And I like I don't know, it's just something about Jaden Reed. I like his matchup a lot this week. You could even put Romeo Doubs if Doubs wasn't hurt. I know he's dealing with an injury, so that might be someone else, but I like Reed a lot. So I like these guys as my sleepers. So those are my start sits and sleepers for week 1 of the wide receiver position. If you guys do have questions, again, hit me up in the comments down below. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Check out my other start and sit videos if you haven't already. Share these videos with other friends, maybe not your league mates, but make sure you guys spread the word. We are growing this channel. You guys have been amazing. We're just shy of that 1,200 mark, so thank you guys so much. Check out all these videos. Hit me up in the comments, and I'll check you guys out next time.